Now comes to the event delegation model. Okay, in that model, we have event source, event listener, and the event object, the three things is here. In the event source, actually, an event source is an object that delegates an event. So object that delegates an event. For example, button, scroll bar, checkbox. So we call this is event source. And then event listener. This is an event listener is an object notified about the events. Actually, what you want to do, it will notify that events. When an event source generates an event, the registered listener are notified, okay, by invoking the appropriate callback procedures in the listener. Okay, next, an event source has method that allows object to be registered as listener. Okay, so this is we call the event listener. Then comes the event object. So information about the event is passed to an event listener's callback as an argument. That means in the event object, there will be one object that will basically call a function. And this function will give you the actually the output of the actions. Okay. Next, move to the next, how the event handling actually happened. So look at here. So basically, this is the event source. Okay, that is we call the button. So okay, once you click the button, that means fires, then it will go to the event objects and it will process through the event handler methods. And also you need to register also. You need to register in the listener object, and that will contain the event handler. That means once you press the button, what happened? It will basically register. Then after that, in the event object, there is an object. Through the object, we call the callback function, and that will give you the basically the output of the event source from click on the event source. Okay, so I'll give you the examples how actually it work. If you look at this event delegation example, so of course we import all these packages: Java AWT frame, Java .awt button, then also import Java AWT event.action listener, and import Java AWT event.action event. Okay, and this is the actually the class we call the button class, and we have defined some methods or function here. And we are also going to use, we call the listener interface inside the AWT. That is, we declared here public interface action listener. So this is name of the interface action listener, and then we have the function here, public void action perform, and this is the event. You see action event, then object. Through the object, we'll call the function basically. Okay, so now look at the examples. The public class, this is the name of the class. For example, slide 8 of 11. Then we extend this one from a frame. So what is the parent class here? Frame, right? And then we're going to implement, we're going to use action listener interface. So that's why we use the implement action listener. So action listener interface we are going to use. Then you see the button class, we create the object, we call the event source. Button object, we call this is event source. Then we create the button. The button is actually click here, right? So then this is the constructor. Once you call the constructor, that means what happened? Once you create any object, remember it will call the constructor. So that means the constructor means the function name that is same with the class name, correct? So now it will call here and then add the button, and it will go for the action listener, and it will call through this pointer, it will register itself. So it will register the app as a listener. Okay. So this is basically the main concept of how actually the event delegation is work. Okay. Next. Okay, now this continuation of the previous one. So now what we are going to do, we are going to get the output from here. Once you click the button, what happened? Okay, so now we have to use the public static void main string argument, and then after that we create the object of the class, slide 8 of 11, then object, then we call it the constructor. So what happened? The constructor will actually, according to the constructor, it will give you the output. Okay, then here you look at here one of the function we call set visible true. So object.set visible true, that means it will set visible true means it will give you the output. You can see the output. Okay. Now here is the callback function. Okay. The callback function, if you look at here, the name of the callback function is action perform. And then action perform, it will pass one parameter we call the event object. Okay, action event is the name of the class and E is the object. So basically through the E actually we will get the output, but here we directly use the output. Okay, you look at here, we are not going to use E, but basically we need to use actually E dot the function that will give you the output, but here directly we use the output. Okay, system.out.println. That means once you click the button, basically what it will do, it will callback function. That means it will run the callback functions, and then through the event is supposed to give you the output. So it will give you the output, you click me. Okay, I hope you understand the concept of how the event is delegate and give the outputs. Okay, now a step of processing an event, how the event is actually processing. So these are the following steps for the processing of an event. So first of all, what you need to do, import the classes. Okay, so you need to import the event package using the import.java.awt events, and these are the package of the import classes, event classes, and then implement the interface. Okay, once you want to implement the interface, that means here we use the action listener interface. We use the command implements, remember? Okay, then we need to register. Next step is register the user class as a listener by calling the method. You see the calling method is add action listeners. Okay, now then after that we are going to implement the methods through the action perform. Okay, so through the action perform we are going to implement the method, and then we call the the action event method. We call the function through the object E. Okay, so this is the way actually how we process the event. Okay, next, if you look at the AWT event classes and listener interfaces, so these are the all is here. You look at the graphical user interface component. So we have the button, and this button, if you look at the button, this is actually the components. We call the GUI components. And the event class for the button is action event. And the interface, listener interface for this button is we call the action listener. Okay. And the callback function used for the button we call the action perform. Okay. So each of the component, remember, graphical user interface components, we have different event class, listener interface, and also callback functions. So let's go to the second one, checkbox and the choice. For the checkbox and choice, the event class is item event, and listener interface name is item listener, and the callback function used for that checkbox and the choice is item state change. Okay, now for the scroll bar, the event class name is adjustment event, and the listener interface is adjustment listener, and the callback function is adjustment value change. Okay, for the mouse event, okay, the listener interface name is mouse listener, and there are callback function is few callback functions here. For example, mouse click, mouse entered, mouse exited, mouse pressed, and also mouse release. Okay, and for mouse event also we have one more listener interface we call the mouse motion listener. Okay, then in that case we use the callback function is mouse drag and mouse move. Okay, for window event class, here we use the listener interface is window listener, and there are few functions is here. We call the callback function window opened, window closing, window closed, window conified, window deconified, window activated, and window deactivated. Okay, so I think you understand what are the events classes in AWT and listener interface and also callback function for all these GUI components.